Yes, I will. So this is a brand new course, a brand new program. Um, it is a course which is based on learning how to do Feldenkrais hands-on work for your horses, and with a very specific frame of reference, which is Thomas's dressage essential movements. And so let me say a little bit about why I chose this particular framework to basically to give a something to hang the Feldenkrais work on. In that when I started to come back into riding, and I think this is a familiar story for many people, I was a very good student. I was trying to get as much knowledge as I could. I had all sorts of instructors, and actually none of it really landed with me, but more importantly, it didn't really land with my horse. So despite my instructor's best attempts, I didn't really feel that he improved, and I didn't really feel that I was communicating to him in a way that I felt aligned with the work that I do as a Feldenkrais practitioner, which is very much based, Feldenkrais is very much based on developing your own coordination, your motor skills, your awareness, your understanding how all the different parts of you are constantly in relationship when you're in movement. And then so often while I was having lessons, it would be all reduced to an isolated part, either an isolated part of the horse that you needed to push more or pressure more or kick more or, you know, yank more with your reins, or you needed to isolate parts of yourself. And that just didn't really make sense to me. And then when I came across Thomas and Shana, they really talked my language, but from the training horses perspective. So I was like, this is absolutely great. I started following them, and then very shortly we started working together, and I started offering Feldenkrais lessons, um, movement lessons to the students. Um, and I gained just an absolutely huge amount of understanding of what is essential for your horses to be balanced, to be happy when they're being ridden by you or trained by you, to be expressive, to advance, far more than I'd gained from anybody else. But I couldn't always translate it into my own riding, quite simply because I didn't really have the experience. So I started to play around with using some of my Feldenkrais hands-on work to take what Thomas was describing he was doing in the saddle with his aids, and I would use my hands to trace it out. And then it was like, oh, this is really amazing. Now I can feel what he's talking about because I'm not so I'm on the ground. I'm using my hands. I'm doing something I'm familiar with. I don't have the pressure of my horse sort of wandering off doing his own thing. And I started to feel like, oh, so when Thomas says, oh, swing the rib cage like this in order to take the weight over the outside pair of legs, I was like, that's what it feels like. I can feel it through my hands. And when I felt it through my hands, I could start to actually use my body in the saddle in the same way as I was using my hands. So that's how it started. And I really developed it just for myself. But I did talk to Thomas and Shanna about it, and eventually they said, "Well, you should do some lessons for people in one of their courses," and that's where we introduced it to you. And now we've made a whole course about it. We've got Charlotte Zetterberg, who's a fellow Feldenkrais practitioner, riding instructor, mindfulness instructor, and we've also got Yvonne Lubka, who is a riding instructor, part of the team, and yeah, so it's a whole new thing. Um, and yeah, we just want to kind of give you an idea of why it might be interesting for you as riders and horse owners, and how you might be able to take it into your own training and make it useful. Yeah.
Yeah, exciting. I mean, it's interesting when you're talking about how you basically taught yourself how to feel
Mm,
certain things that I talk about from the
mm,
rider's perspective. Because for me, when I played with the FeldenHorse
mm,
exercises that you had developed, I found it was a great way to connect with the horse and to calm the horse and to teach the horse how many legs he has, where the legs are, to move the weight around, so teach the horse body awareness and fill in gaps that the horse may have in his understanding of his own body.
mm,
But I mean, you're right. I mean, this could be potentially a great way for riders to understand, make them a better rider in the saddle,
mm,
because then they can see and they can feel small movements, that maybe the advanced riders take for granted. But if you're
mm,
still, more in the beginning stages, then this is all, Greek to you, and you don't know what the hell they're talking about and stuff. And this would be a great way
mm,
to learn to feel, probably, and to learn to see,
mm,
and then you can translate it under saddle. And for me, long reining did that actually. I
mm,
started long reining, when I was still, not very advanced, and I could see things. When you're right behind the horse, you can see how movement travels through the horse's body, or not, or where the horse escapes and then the movement gets derailed and that sort of thing. And that gave me like a visual image uh, to go with what I was feeling in the saddle. And that was really helpful. And I
mm.
think the FeldenHorse can be another avenue like that.
Yeah, and what you said there a little bit earlier
Mm.
about really what we can do with the Feldenkrais is we can kind of go in under the radar.
Mhm.
So, a lot of horses, they are so quick to brace against
Mhm.
anything that feels like a pressure that they don't like or enjoy or understand, or takes them in a direction of weight shifting that doesn't feel agreeable.
Mhm.
And often people meet that resistance with the same amount of force or greater force.
Yeah,
Uh,
sorry, I just YouTube. I have to live
oh,
stream.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Forgot. Got carried away. So thank you, Janine, for letting us know. So,
So I'll say that again, Thomas, for the YouTube people. We're just talking about, Thomas was saying that how he kind of, I think almost you're describing how you learned to take your, sort of develop the feel that you needed to take your theory into practice in a way that the horse and you could then have a kind of two-way conversation was through long reining.
yeah,
And I think there's something in what you're saying is when you're long reining, you're less kind of in their face. You're behind them, so you can observe and you can see what the relationships are. You can see where the resistance and the bracing are,
right.
is in a way where you're not kind of coming up against them and meeting their resistance with a greater force.
Yeah,
Because I think that's my experience is horses really don't like that very much. It's not that they won't submit to it, but I'm
yeah,
not sure it actually results in a better sense of
right.
them being in balance.
That's true. I mean, a lot of traditional riding instruction is sort of apply pressure from the outside, and
Mm,
make the horse yield to the pressure, more leg,
mm,
more rein, more whatever.
mm,
And for long reining, one advantage was that I didn't have to worry about my seat, like sitting the trot and not interfering with the
mm,
horse. You're on the ground, and then you can focus on the rein aids, and of course on the long rein, the rein can take on functions of the leg, and that
mm,
that kind of thing. And yeah, seeing what the hind legs were doing and what the rib cage in the back was doing, and the shoulders and the neck and the paw, like seeing the whole
mm,
picture, that was really helpful because I couldn't feel
mm.
it at the time.
Yeah,
I mean, I felt something, I didn't know what I was feeling.
yeah,
And
yeah.
but there I could see it, and then it connected. It's like, oh, when it feels like this is what it looks like. And
Mm,
so that really helped me. And you can then
mm,
practice, the rain aids, without having to worry about your seat and your
mm,
weight and your leg and all the other things. Like
mm,
you can reduce it a little bit, and so it becomes a little bit less complex. So it's easier
mm,
then to learn certain things, right? And then you
mm,
can take them with you into the saddle. And FeldenHorse is the same way, because you see the
mm,
horse, uh, you see how he moves, and you feel the horse, when you're touching him, you feel the muscle tone. And FeldenHorse is so, like you say, under the radar. It's so benign, non-invasive.
mm,
It's almost more from the inside out rather than from the outside in. A lot of, the leg and the rein is from the
mm,
outside in. There's like pressure here and pressure there,
mm,
and
mm,
and yeah, a lot of horses brace against it right away, especially if
mm.
they had bad experiences. Then if you touch them with the rein or you touch them with the leg, they immediately say, no, go away, I don't want you.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
with the FeldenHorse, they're much more likely to open up,
Mm. Yeah,
especially.
and I think that that it's the opening up often comes because with Feldenkrais hands-on work, where you start with blending with the movement patterns that they already do well, which are often considered to be problems
Yeah,
with
exactly.
traditional trainers, but
Right.
actually they're just movement patterns. So if your horse has a preference to shift their weight a lot onto the left front leg, um, it's not that you need to take that away. It's just that you need to find a way to go, oh, look, you love to go towards your left front leg. See how well you do that. See how well you use your right hind to take you over there again and again. See how the whole of you is organized so that you can feel safe over your left front leg. But what if I just go with you, and then I just redirect a little bit? What does it feel like to go a bit more to the middle? And then back to your favorite left front leg. And so that's what we're doing. It's almost like you're kind of starting with where is the rockability of your horse. And what I mean by that is where can you oscillate your horse to? Oscillations are absolutely fantastic for going under the radar because you're actually kind of almost swinging with the horse's own tendency to sway in and out of, you know, weight shifting to different places. But then you use that, and the moment you feel a bracing and a resistance, you know you've gone too far
Yeah.
because when you go too far and they brace and resist, they are not going to retain that and revisit that place. So it's a very informative way of having a conversation with your horse about here is what you do well. How about we work with you and I organize myself to move you in such a way that some other directions become just as pleasant for you, just as enjoyable, as safe, because it's so important that the horse feels safe to shift their weight over the legs that they prefer to avoid. And actually, I would just wondered if you could talk a little bit, Thomas, about this idea of weight shifting, this idea that in order for your horse to feel safe, but also to advance, they need to be able to shift their weight equally easily
Right.
over any leg,
Yeah, that's
laterally, fore, aft.
yeah. That's something that was never really part of my own instructions that I received.
Mm,
Um, and especially the side to side weight shift that never played a role. Took me forever to realize how important that is. I mean, dressage people talk about taking the weight off the front end and putting it on the hind legs and
mm,
so on, right? And when you were saying, well, the horse likes to lean on the left shoulder, then the traditional approach in dressage would be to say this is wrong, and now you do the opposite. And of course, then the horses immediately get defensive. And I mean, horses sometimes think you're trying to kill them. If you tell them that, don't lean on your favorite front leg, but put the weight on the other side,
mm,
they think, oh my God, no, I'm going to fall down, I'm going to die. I know it. That leg is going to break off if, it's not strong
mm,
enough to hold me or whatever. They have these weird ideas sometimes, and they get very defensive when you try to force the issue.
mm,
So
mm,
this the swinging, the rocking, is a great way because you can make it small, very, very small increments. And then the horses, if they move a millimeter in the other direction, then they realize, oh yeah, it's not hurting. The leg is still there. I didn't fall down. I
yeah.
didn't die. Hmm. Not as bad as I thought, right? And then you go back to where they feel safe, right? You're back to the favorite leg, and then from there, then you can go, back and forth a little bit, and gradually, the pendulum can swing a little bit bigger as the horse learns to trust his own body or learns to realize, oh yeah, this leg over there, this is
Mm,
strong enough. This can hold me too. And then they may even realize at some point that if they don't continuously lean on the one leg, it's actually more comfortable because, the
yeah.
muscles develop unevenly otherwise, or they're always tense and tight, and maybe they hurt because they're always
Mm,
working, and rocking to the other side gives
mm,
them a chance to relax the muscles that were
mm,
always working. And once they realize that being more balanced and straight and so on actually feels good and allows them to be more energy efficient so they don't
mm,
have to work so hard, then they're happy to go there, and then
mm,
they're much more cooperative.
mm,
It takes a little while sometimes for them to discover that and then to trust it, so, and it's yeah, often when you try to make the big changes, the horses won't do it because they can't, or they can't imagine it, or
mm,
they're not willing to do it because maybe they had bad experiences and people have forced them or whatever. So you have to find smaller, more incremental steps. So how can I break this down into smaller
Mm.
steps? And also over the years, I found that the idea of rocking and just moving the weight around and keep
Yeah.
the weight moving really reduces resistance in the horse and really maybe awakens curiosity and
Mm.
yeah, helps the horse to open up and just
Mm.
allow us to come in,
Mm.
with
Mm.
our aids. Um,
Yeah, and I think what you're describing as well in that it is actually uncomfortable on the whole to be so
uh,
stuck in your particular pattern that you just hang out there all the time. And it's only when and this I'm talking for us as well, it's only when you feel the other options, how you can move away from them as well as go into the pattern, that kind of loosens its hold because habits are habits and habits are very addictive and compulsive, and it's where we go when we're under pressure. And I found it to be the same with horses. And so, with the Feldenkrais work and the hands-on work as well as the movement classes work, you start to kind of situate the problems that you're experiencing. Most people experience just as discomfort. They probably couldn't even describe, oh, the side of my neck is uncomfortable because I always take the base of my neck over to the left in order to balance over my left leg, in order to take weight away from my right leg, which I injured 100 years ago. But that's kind of how habits of compensation form, way back in your past or even relatively recently. And it's being able to see, oh, okay, so that is not an isolated part. It is actually situated in a whole pattern of movement. So just as much as I can move here and hang out away from my what was once painful right leg, if I can go into it and I can back out of it, I can probably start to find the other directions. And the way that you describe your riding patterns is so often a description of that. In that, you go, oh, okay, so this horse loves to hang out on his left side or left legs. He loves to keep his, a stiff left side or a long left side and hollow right. Oh, what if I just oscillate them a little bit over this way, not too much, not too much, so that you're just taking a bit more to the right. Suddenly the horse finds that that's possible. And then before you know it, your little problem, which is always in the same place, has become situated in a whole pattern. And then it becomes just one pattern in a whole variety of patterns, which is basically what makes up dressage movements, doesn't it? Is a whole variety of patterns in order for your horse to move equally easily in any direction without preparation. Couldn't get that idea of that is where center is the place where you are prepared to go to the left, to the right, forward, back, up, down, to rotate for you and for your horse. So you need to be able to do that as well. Otherwise, you can't ask your horse to do it effectively with your own body.
yeah. Yeah, it reminds me that in dressage, I mean, traditionally, people often think of things in very static terms,
Mm,
like balance. They think, oh yeah, the equal weight on front legs and hind legs, but it's like
mm,
a statue, right? And the,
yeah.
the weight now stays there. Or straightness, when the horse is straight, then he's sort of, I don't know, aligned on the line of travel and in a static way, right? And if you try to do that, you end up wrestling with a horse, right?
Mm,
Because the horse will probably lean against you and insist that he wants to stay crooked or he wants to
mm,
stay on the forehand. And if you approach it in a dynamic way, like you're saying, like you just move the weight,
mm,
but don't insist on staying in that one particular place, but you allow the horse to go back to where he likes to be and then move to some other place and back to where he's safe and then back to another place and so on, back and forth. um, the horses develop that vocabulary that eventually they can move their shoulders left and right, and the croup can go left and right, and the weight can go into any corner of the
mm,
body, into any side. And then when the horse has that ability and that vocabulary, you can just put him anywhere. Then
mm,
it's not a big deal to
mm,
align him on this circle or in
mm,
that shoulder in or that half pass. Then it's easy, right? Whereas if
mm,
you statically try to force the horse into a certain frame or pattern or alignment, without allowing him to deviate from that, then you clash.
Mm.
That doesn't
Yeah.
work. No.
Yeah. It's,
And
I
they
mean,
don't learn. Yeah.
go on. Sorry.
I'm sorry, and then just as an afterthought, and then the
Yeah.
horses don't learn. If you force them into something and they try to break out, they will never learn their shoulder in or a circle or a half
No.
pass, or they don't learn to be balanced because it's
Mm.
like a straitjacket to them.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes. And you often talk about that the horse offers something.
Right.
And that's such a difference from being forced into a particular shape,
Right.
or you get them into a shape which is
Mhm.
the shape they need to be to be a shoulder in, where it just isn't really like that. Movement isn't really like that. Movement is constant fluidity on your part and on the horse's part, that you need to be able um, to both follow them, to be with them, to lead. I was playing around today with my horse who was a little bit kind of really stuck through onto his left pair of legs, and it felt like, oh, I can't really get him over to the right. So I tried first of all to kind of swing him from the left to the right, but that didn't really work. So then I thought, oh, I'm just going to imagine that I can draw him to the right with my right side. So then it wasn't I was pushing him over. I was imagining I was drawing him, but that worked. So he didn't want the pressure through his left side,
Mhm.
but he was happy once I stopped fussing with his left side for me to kind of almost give him the space to fill
Mhm.
on the right. But
Interesting.
on another day, it could have been that I would need to, yield more with some part of my left side to yield his left side. So it's sort of building up this kind of creative, curious way of studying the relationships, the skeletal relationships, the movement relationships, how every single part of your horse is involved in every single movement that they make, from their nose to their tail. Yeah. And it is what you demonstrate in
Mhm.
your exercises, in the way that you talk about your training.
Yeah.
Um, and it,
Flexibility has become important to me because of,
yeah,
decades of making mistakes and finally figuring out
yes,
how the
yes, it's
horses, prefer to be worked.
yes, it's this experimentation. It's this
Yeah.
attitude of being open to making mistakes,
Right.
but having a sort of set of principles that run through.
Mhm.
The principles are, for me, it's this kind of finding the way in through stealth, not kind of trying to correct the horse, but having this understanding that what they're showing in their body is how they feel safe. And if I try to take them too quickly out of what feels safe, they will brace defensively. And then you're just working as hard as they're working, but getting nowhere. To reduce the effort in myself so that I can move as well as possible in order to invite them to move. So all those sorts of things I think are kind of run through the horse training and through stuff that I would do for myself for my
Yeah.
own development.
Yeah, and also the mental flexibility that if you
Mm,
run into a resistance, that you don't try to push through, power
mm,
through it. This is often the old way, that the
mm,
horse has to be obedient and he has to do it. But then change your approach and say, well, if that doesn't work, if he doesn't allow that to go through, how about that? How about if I come from a different side? Or, start with a different movement, start with a different part of the body, and
mm,
then
mm.
eventually come around again to what he didn't want to do, and
Yeah,
so on, so that you always have different strategies and different uh, tools, I guess,
yeah,
and
yeah.
how to explain something, how to approach something.
Mm,
Um, that also prevents you from getting frustrated,
mm,
and feeling hopeless or defeated, or like if you only have the one right way of doing something and everything else is wrong, and then the horse says, no, I don't want to do
mm,
that, or I can't
mm,
do that,
mm,
then the only option you have is escalation
mm.
or giving up. And then that's, of course, then when people use more force and then they fight with the
Yeah,
horse and so on. Whereas if you have lots of options and say, okay, well, this didn't work, well, it doesn't matter, right? It's like
mm,
using a wrench that's the wrong size, right? Well, I guess that's not working, so no,
mm,
no use in trying to force it, but let me find a different one that fits better, right? And so if you have enough tools in your toolkit, enough different ways of approaching something, explaining something, then
mm,
much less likely to get stuck. You're much less likely to get into an argument. You're much less likely to get angry. The horse is much less likely to get
mm,
frustrated and angry
mm,
or scared,
mm.
of the rider. So,
Yeah, and what you're describing for me is it's people you see it all the time. People talk about a conversation, but actually
mhm.
often I when I look at what they're saying, it's not really a conversation. It's a sort of one-way traffic. Conversation is the art of listening,
Right.
is to listen long enough that you're not just coming in with your own,
Mhm.
helpful suggestions.
Right.
To really take some time to trace out how your horse is moving, to feel, to notice it, to observe um, in as many different ways as you can. Because I think that type of listening leads to a sense that as you listen like that, the horse will feel that you're listening, and that in itself can reduce some of the defensive bracing.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a
Yeah.
quality of listening, isn't it? And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's some for me it's a practice because of course I can't always listen as well as I would like, because my life gets in the way or I'm distracted by
Right.
something or I have an emotional response to something that I didn't realize I did. And but that
Mm.
would be my aim is to listen in such a way that the horse can sense that I'm listening. And
Yeah.
it's a very different feel.
Mm. Yeah. And that's also something that's not, I think, explained enough in traditional riding lessons that aids are not just there to give orders to the
Yeah,
horse, but they're also listening devices, like the
yeah.
contact you have with your leg or with your rein,
Mm,
whatever, with your seat. You get a stream of
mm,
information from the horse all the time.
mm, mm,
So before you give an aid, you should tune into that stream of information, listen,
mm,
and then based on that information, make a decision of what kind of aid do I want to give? What makes sense? What do I want to maybe change in the way the horse is moving
mm,
or whatever that may be. And then once you've given the aid, of course, you have to switch to listening again. It's like, is
mm,
the horse doing what I'm asking him to do, or is he doing
mm,
something different, right? And then
mm.
based on that feedback of the horse, you can maybe give another aid, right? That is probably different from the first one, because maybe refine it or maybe rephrase the question or
Mm,
whatever. And by doing that, the horse realizes that his response matters and that you're taking him seriously and
mm,
paying attention and you're and then the dialogue develops, right? Because it
mm,
matters how the horse responds, and then you
mm,
try to tailor your next response
mm,
to the horse's last response, and then sort of you're off and running basically in this
mm.
conversation.
Yeah, yeah. And it just reminded me a little bit of in the filming of this
Mm.
course, it is quite funny because obviously I have to film content for the course. But sometimes when I'm filming content for the horse with Cuckoo, he's like, I'm not really feeling like filming content for the course. So it's been this sort of like, okay, it's a very interesting situation where uh, how can I actually come to the place where he will be open to me filming? I do ask him, I say, look, it's for the people. This is for the people so that they can, use their hands on their horses and find out just as much as they can about how they move. And sometimes he's like, yeah, okay, I'll do it for the people. And sometimes he's like, nah, I won't do it for anybody. But in one of these sort of struggle videos that I was making, I wanted to kind of connect the feeling of when the internal and external rotation of a front leg is connected to the shortening and the lengthening of the ribs on the same side. Yeah. And it didn't really matter how many times I tried to pick up his leg. He would just like put it straight back down. So then I gave up on lifting his leg and I just went, okay, I'll put one hand on your shoulder blade, one hand on your ribs, and we'll see if we can find a way to connect the shoulder blade to the ribs in this idea of lengthening and shortening so that you have a short side and a long side or a hollow side and a stiff side. Go back to the legs, I can pick them up and I can do the internal and external rotation, which is something about like, okay, yes, I'm listening, and you're saying no, but I don't want to just give up because that's the thing, isn't it? If I listen always to my horse, he pretty much has a history of saying no to everything. I would never be able to help him discover something new about himself. I found plenty of things about myself through him, but he isn't always willing to find out new things about himself. But when I do, when I do go, okay, I'm listening to you, I can feel you don't like that, but I still think this would be really interesting for you to feel in your body. So I came in another way, and then I was able to get that feeling of the front legs being able to lift, a little bit of rotation in, a little bit of rotation out. And of course, that helps him. It helps him move more freely. It helps him be able to turn more easily on a circle. So yeah, there's a whole lot of ways that you can have conversations. They're not always smooth and flowing and lovely. Sometimes it feels like a little bit of negotiation. Sometimes it's creative. Sometimes it's a very interesting process.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, but I think that's a good example what you just explained, that you tried to do one thing, the horse said no, don't want to do it, and then you said, okay, fine, we'll try something else. How
Mm,
about moving this body part?
mm.
And then he said yes, and that was okay. And then you
Yeah.
can eventually come around again.
Kind of loop back, exactly. Yeah. Because I had this idea in my mind, that well, A, I had to film. I had to film, but I had to film. But B, that this it was about turning the shoulders, which is one of the essentials, yeah. I was like, well, yeah, he loves to turn his shoulders this way, but he doesn't like to turn his shoulders that way. But it would be really helpful for him to be able to turn his shoulders equally as in both directions. And I had this idea that if I could find a way to blend enough with him, to redirect him, so that I didn't run into his braces, which I did several times, that he would agree. Actually, this does feel okay. It feels okay, and actually, I feel better afterwards.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I remember watching you when I came to Portugal, watching you train your horse, Gully Papas, and every now and then he'd be going like, no, 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 this is not what I think is a good idea at all. But you were very like, no, no, I think we could try a little bit of this or a little bit of that. And eventually he was like, oh yeah, okay, oh, it wasn't so bad, you know. Mm,
Stay flexible and not be like a
yeah,
terrier who bites down,
yes,
on
yes,
something and then not let go.
mm,
The being light on your feet and moving around and
yes,
different things. Um, that's helpful, I find, because I used to be the terrier type,
mm,
that I wanted to solve that problem. I wanted to make
mm,
that work, and then I wouldn't let go, and that just never
mm,
worked.
mm,
So whereas,
yeah,
yeah, if you're more flexible and you can present the same issue in different ways and
mm,
break it into smaller steps and so on, then you can avoid resistances
mm, mm,
can change the horse's mind, and then they're saying, okay, fine, I'll try this.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of the flexibility, you said about being agile in your own and how you're moving. One of the things, and the little kind of vignette I told you about this filming the turning the shoulders, FeldenHorse hands on, is that I discovered where on his body he was happy to have my hands, where on his ribs and where on his shoulder blade, which meant that when I got into the saddle, I could do the same thing with my body part, which was where his hand was. So I could ask him to turn the shoulders with my thigh, because that's where my hand was on his ribs. And I could draw his shoulder blade back, almost like in my imagination, with my thigh and my knee. But he doesn't like anything kind of lower down. So he doesn't like my lower leg. So if I put my hand on his body around where my lower leg would be, he hates it. And the same with when I'm in the saddle. So you really do find out why your aids sometimes don't work. Why does your horse resist when I don't know, squeeze your heels or whatever it is? Um, yeah, so your hands can reveal a lot about why things haven't worked in your own body when you've asked with your own body for your horse to move in a particular way.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And there are horses that hate lower leg aids.
Mm,
They hate any pressure,
mhm,
any squeezing or gripping,
mhm.
kicking, and they just brace against it.
Yeah,
They're a little tricky to ride because, of course, in our traditional riding instruction, it's always more leg, right?
yeah,
And that sort of thing. And you have to find a way to ride them differently, communicate
mm,
differently, and it's helpful. Then, yeah,
mm,
if you're on the ground and you put your hand on and you feel the tension under the skin, and you feel
mm,
the muscles contracting, or you feel the horse going. against you.
Mm.
You know, sometimes you feel them how they become hard and then they
Yeah.
lean into you as even you haven't even done anything yet. It's just
Mm.
you're starting to touch and they're already,
Yeah.
you
They're
know,
pushing you out. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, in that situation where, you feel that like they're kind of going like that,
Mhm,
you can actually go, oh, you like to do that. Let me help
mhm.
you do that more. So you can actually just like put one hand on the withers and actually help
Mhm.
them push you
Yeah,
away. And it's
yeah,
amazing how that actually gains their trust.
right, yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, you know.
Yeah, that's one of those things like in dressage that is so hard to do because we
Mm,
were so conditioned to always correct and do the opposite rather than
mm,
making the mistake worse. That was
mm,
like, oh my God, my teachers would kill me,
mm.
you know, if I make the horse even
Yes,
more crooked or even
yes.
more unbalanced. So that is a really hard thing to overcome
Mm,
if you've been conditioned in that traditional
mm,
dressage way, you
mm,
know. But it makes sense. Like, I mean, if you really move him far enough over, he has to shift the weight back, otherwise he falls
mm,
down, right? So, I mean, like,
mm.
I see the logic in it. It's just we were drilled so many years not to do that.
Mm. Yeah,
So,
and I mean, really, for us, our nervous system and vestibular system is designed to stop us from falling over. So,
mhm, mhm,
if you kind of like to hang out on one hip, there's only so far you're going to go before your nervous system just directs
mhm,
everything to brace to stop you falling over. And it's the same
yeah,
with the horses. So,
mhm,
nobody's going to die if they hang out in their favorite place,
mhm,
even if it doesn't look pretty.
yeah,
It's one of the things that, because I came from a background of fitness training and Pilates and things where everything has to be, they're looking for symmetry and that kind of control, is that
mhm,
it was really challenging for me to give up on that. But actually, when I gave up on that, I found a much better sense of my midline and my center and how my center of mass, my pelvis, could be supported from the ground up, from my base of support, my feet. And, a lot of that holding myself in a particular posture to be straight, once I got rid of that,
mhm,
I really was able to change the way I moved and feel a lot better in myself, a lot
yeah,
better coordinated, actually. I became a lot better coordinated,
mhm,
a lot more able to do things more evenly on both sides. Whereas when I was trying to keep myself even, I still couldn't actually act evenly. I just could hold
mhm,
myself evenly. So it was a sort of
mhm,
fake thing. And I think
yeah,
that's very similar to what people are often doing with horses, are holding them in a posture and go, okay,
okay.
now you're straight, you're balanced over all four legs or held
Mhm,
over four legs. Why can't you go there and there?
mhm,
And you
yeah,
can't because you're just
yeah.
so compressed.
Yeah, exactly. The old way
Mm,
to
mm.
be correct at all times
Yeah,
and
yeah,
yeah, be symmetrical and that
yeah.
kind of thing. And yeah, that creates rigidity,
Mm,
you know. Whereas if you're a little bit looser and you just explore, then
mm,
yeah, sometimes it's not correct, but it's not the end of the world, right?
mm.
We won't hang out there forever. It's just for a moment, and then we'll
Yeah,
go somewhere else. And then
yeah.
the horse learns that there's a spectrum, right? Of
Mm,
being in the middle and veering to the left and veering to the right with the shoulders, or moving the croup to the left, moving the croup to the right. And out of that exploration, then, you know, the lateral movements arise
mm,
in a way that they're not a big
mm.
deal anymore, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, I think that's right.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
And that's it, isn't it? Is that when you train like this, is that you find yourself being able to do things that you couldn't do before, rather than
Right.
striving to do those things as a
Mhm.
kind of goal to be reached. It's a very strange thing. Suddenly
Mhm.
coordinations which you didn't have are
Right.
available, but you've never actually trained that particular action.
Right.
It's just
Yeah.
that you've done all the foundational work
Mhm. Yeah.
from the very, very square one, which is what the
Mhm.
email was about tonight. From square one is that you've sort of filled in the gaps in your awareness.
Right. Mhm.
You have discovered the relationships between all the different parts of you which make it
Mhm.
possible, and you've felt where you've been resisting and limiting yourself to be able to move as well as you can.
Right.
And my experience is that, we can do that with our hands, with our horses. And
Right.
people who are very skilled riders can do that with their bodies in the saddle with their
Right.
horses.
Yeah. It helps to think of things as a continuum was when I was young, it was now you're riding straight ahead, single
Mm,
track. Now you're riding a circle. And now you go from your circle or from your whole school to a
mm,
shoulder in. It always had to be perfect, right? It has to be
yeah.
correct, like in the competition that, this is, and there was no margin of error. There was no range. And I like to look at things now more as a continuum. Like you can
Mm,
move the hips or the shoulders a little bit more or a little bit less. You can bend a little more, a little less, or you can change the bend, or
mm,
you can gravitate towards a leg yield or towards a shoulder in, but it's like all one big thing. And you can just find points on that continuum, but it's not
mm,
black and white and it's either that or
mm,
or that and nothing else, right?
mm.
So that gives you a lot more freedom and it takes the
Yeah.
pressure off. I find it a
Yeah.
lot less stressful to
Mm,
ride. Like, and then even if you realize, oh yeah, now my shoulder in just became a leg yield because I lost the
mm,
outside hind. Okay, no big deal. Let's get the outside hind leg back underneath. Maybe
mm,
I'll ask for a couple of steps of haunches in or a counter shoulder in or something, right? Or, the horse is bulging, my shoulder in just became a nose in because the outside shoulder is stuck on the rail. So well,
mm,
let's ride a volte or let's ride a square, turn the shoulder,
mm,
not a big deal. So we fix it.
mm,
You know, if you
mm.
notice it, you see it, you feel it, and then,
That's it.
but you do something playful, and then
Yeah.
you can come back to your
Mm,
shoulder in and, let's see if it's better now. Yeah.
mm. Yes,
So,
it's the noticing, because if
yeah.
you don't notice, if you're not aware, then you don't know what you're doing, and then you can't
Mhm.
do what you want. So
Mhm.
it's that kind of idea. And it was the other interesting thing about filming for this course is because
Mhm.
I've hung the FeldenHorse on your 6 dressage
Mhm. Oh,
essentials
that's an
and kind of
interesting
7, really, because we've now
point of view
included
too.
weight
Yeah.
shifting.
Mhm.
It was an interesting mix of, okay, so I'm
Mhm.
going to go with all these principles of going with my
Mhm.
horse and then feeling, can I redirect? But with
Mhm.
a really clear structure is that for your horse really needs to be able to move forward, need to be able
Mhm.
to halt, they need to be able
Mhm.
to turn their shoulders, they need to be able to bend equally easily in both on both sides. They need to be able to rein back, and they
Mhm.
need to be able to sidestep. So it
Mhm.
was quite a challenge. Like, on the one hand, I've got this sort of theoretical framework, and on the
Mhm.
other hand, I'm kind of doing everything through feel.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that's what it makes it interesting, because
Mhm.
anybody can put their hands on their horse and kind of get a nice feeling, and their horse
Mhm.
feels a bit looser. But
Mhm.
how is that useful? If your horse is just loose and hanging out, how does it actually help you take it into a functional movement? And that, I think, is what we're doing, which is a little bit different from what I've seen in other courses, is we're really making it very specific
Yeah.
about functional dressage movements or functional essential movements for your horse.
Right. Yeah, this yeah, super helpful.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how many horses have a poor understanding of these basic movement
Mm,
patterns, or their body, how to do them
mm,
in a balanced way without falling
yes.
down, without, or without having to brace somewhere and so
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you'll feel is that, if you do join the course, is that you'll learn through the FeldenHorse hands-on. You'll learn what is it that's been getting in the way of your horse being able to, for
Mhm.
instance, move forward easily or
Mhm.
side bend easily. And you'll get some ideas about how you can reorganize
Yeah.
um, yourself to
Mhm.
organize them better. Because if you can't
Mhm.
organize yourself behind the message you're trying to give, so if you can't move yourself in a way that's congruent with the movement you're asking of them, you can't really get these movements to be integrated in them. It's very much about how you move to move them. Mm.
Yeah, and I'm sure when you practice these things, you'll see why maybe your horse has a hard time bending left, or why
Indeed.
a
Yeah.
horse can't cross with the right hind leg, or
Yes.
why, any number of things, why your horse doesn't go forward,
Yeah.
or why it's so hard to stop your horse,
Yeah.
because it'll show up
It will
in
show up.
not
Yeah.
work, that
Yeah.
there'll be a resistance to certain things,
Indeed. And
and
even with the tiniest, most gentle
mhm,
ask or
mhm,
question, the resistance shows itself. And
mhm,
you'll develop the sensitivity in your hands that you can feel that sooner and sooner with
mhm,
smaller movements, which is what you see with the really advanced riders, is that they can feel the smallest little incremental brace or defensive resistance, and
Hmm.
they know how to reorganize their balance or what they're asking so that they don't take the horse to a big old defensive brace, you know. Yeah. So that's the structure of the course. That's the if you like, it's a bit paradoxical. So there's structure and a really clear aim and goal. And then there's this feeling stuff and the awareness stuff, which comes from the Feldenkrais. And how can you bring those together so that, yes, because that is it, isn't it? That's the art of riding, is that theory and knowledge and analysis and feeling and sensitivity are all there. And sometimes the feeling is more to the fore, and sometimes you need your theoretical analysis. And yeah,
Yeah, that reminds me too that when I was young, we were always told that you can't learn feel, like you're either born with it or you're hopeless,
yeah,
essentially.
yeah,
And I think with FeldenHorse, you can learn to feel
yeah,
faster, easily than if you're just riding,
yeah.
you know,
I
because
think so.
I mean,
Mm,
feel can be learned. I mean, I had to
mm,
learn feel. I didn't have any when I
mm,
started, and
mm,
I learned how to do it. I
mm,
had to teach myself in a way, but I would have learned it a lot faster probably if I
mm,
had known all the things I know now and you had the FeldenHorse at the time.
mm,
Yeah.
mm.
Um, so I think this will be helpful for the horses and the riders both in
Yeah,
different
yeah,
ways.
yeah. And I think what's nice as well is that, we've got I think it's Shannon is asking about, is there riding exercises? Well, Shannon, we've come up with something even more unusual, really, is that we've come up with a riding pattern or a pattern you can do on the ground at the start, which tests your 6 dressage essentials. It's entirely optional. You don't have to do it. But you ride this pattern or you do it on the ground and you see, can you feel which elements or which essentials are more secure and which are missing? And then you're going to do the course and then do the same riding pattern or pattern on the ground at the end of the course. And Thomas and Shana, hopefully, if she's feeling well enough, will be part of that at the start and the finish. And hopefully, Thomas will be able to come to the odd live as well through the course. And Charlotte Zetterberg will be part of the main modules of, she's got some great FeldenHorse sessions and awareness sessions. And we also have Yvonne is going to ride the pattern that we've chosen, which tests the essentials. And she's really done a beautiful job. She also shows it in hand. So there's quite a lot of stuff in there. I imagine there's probably too much stuff to actually take it all in one course, in one run through the course. But yeah, there'll be plenty there for to really dig your teeth into for a long time, I think. Yeah. And of course, we've got a lot of support during the course because, one of the things I really like to do is have live meetings to encourage people to film themselves doing the FeldenHorse. Charlotte and I will be giving you feedback on your hands-on work. And yeah, so that's a little bit about the actual content of the course, if you like. Yeah.
So Sabine here had a comment.
Yeah.
To read that. She says, I lost my rescue mare in May due to a kidney disease she was born with. I got her 6 years ago because nobody wanted to ride her. At that point of time, no vet could tell what the reason was for her behaving under saddle, running, no straightness, not able to canter. However, I had to find an alternative way. I signed up for the top line makeover course with some FeldenHorse, and that was a game changer for Aurelia. She found some balance and could canter at least a few rounds, did almost pay off, was surprisingly nice to ride until
Mm,
last quarter of 2025 when the whole story was revealed due to blood work and ultrasound.
mm,
But what I actually want to say, this non-invasive way enabled her to find the balance to have a good life for 5 years. The normal
mm,
riding could not do this. I spent 3 years ago, or sent 3 years ago, a video to Thomas where she cantered for the first time when we opened the grass paddock in spring
mm,
for the first time. Thank you for this. Oh,
mm. It's a
great to hear. Yeah,
it's a lovely, it's kind of a poignant story. I'm so sorry that you
yeah,
lost your horse. And I'm so glad you were able to have that kind of nice story for the 5 years that you were together. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no,
Mm.
it's actually had a really good life there.
Yeah. Yeah,
Make a
that's
lot of progress.
yeah. But I think what did you say? This non-invasive. Yeah, I think that's right. It's not airy fairy
Mhm.
because it's, Feldenkrais hands-on work is very precise. It asks for a lot of attention from you as the practitioner, if you like. But it is very non-invasive feeling, even though it seems to elicit terrific changes. Yeah, in my experience of having worked with the hands-on Feldenkrais for a very long time now, something like 28 years or something. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it it's
yeah. I was
mm,
just thinking of, how to describe it or define it, but it's really a combination of applied physics and maybe energy work and of
mm,
course applied anatomy, biomechanics. It's all in there, right?
mm, mm, mm. Mm. Yeah, I mean, we really are working with skeletal relationships, but I'm sure people who do a lot of, fascia work will feel like, oh, you're working with my fascia. But
Mhm.
I like skeletal relationships because skeletal relationships give me a very clear feedback on how I am moving and how my horse is moving. I find it easier to feel, for instance, the vertebrae how they are in relationship to each other and moving than to kind of think about however many hundreds of muscles there are and which one is contracting and which one isn't. So that's why I like the skeletal relationships. It's not because it's better, it's just my preference.
Mhm.
And yeah, certainly sometimes people say, oh, you work really energetically, your hands are really hot. I go, well, I don't know, I might just have hot hands, but that's what they feel. So, I
Mhm.
think it's often these things are, it's just a lens, isn't it? It's a perspective. It's how you see the work that you're doing or your own self-development through a particular lens which makes sense to you. But the aim, I think, is that you have a fuller life,
Mhm.
more enjoyable, more creative, more satisfying. And
Yeah.
I think that emotionally, of course, and psychologically, that makes a terrific difference to your day-to-day life. But I think you can also bring that to your horses through this work, through Thomas's work, through my work and Charlotte's work and Yvonne's work. Yeah,
And yeah, no, I mean, what I was trying to get at is that there is a physical scientific foundation
right.
that
Yes,
it's
there is.
based
Yes.
on.
Mm,
But if you have that talent for energy work and that
mm.
sensitivity, it can just enhance it, that
Yes.
it's open basically. You can add
Yes.
things on that will make it even better, so to speak.
Yes. Yes.
It's not all just mechanical,
No, not at all. No.
but
No, 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 not at all.
still plays a role, right?
Yeah, and that's the listening part. The listening part is it's that dialogue of listening, which is very different from what you described earlier as just telling,
Mhm.
actually, or like if you just tell a story and an anecdote, that's not really the sort of conversation we're going to be doing here. It's a very lively and alive dialogue between you and your horse and you and yourself and back and forth.
And
Mm.
that listening can become so subtle that it's other people would say
Yeah,
it's energy
there's
work.
nothing happening.
Yeah, I can feel
Yeah,
the
yeah,
thoughts of the horse. Yeah,
yes,
that kind of thing.
yes.
Yeah, it becomes very, very
Mm,
differentiated and yeah, very subtle.
mm,
You know.
mm. Yeah, and actually, I mean, to Ricky's point there, where she said it used to feel like abracadabra,
Hmm.
Feldenkrais, and now it makes sense, is that yes, that the more you do the work, the more it isn't just that you do a few movements and you magically can do things better or feel better, but you understand the relationships in yourself and you can feel them to an extent where you also know when you're in a particular place where your pattern isn't helping you. It's good for that. It gives me this feedback that I need to actually go and do something for myself because I know what it feels like to be in my pattern and I know what it feels like to be less in my pattern and I know which one I'd rather be in. Hmm. We're going to have another live, I think, Thomas, aren't we? That's the plan. So yeah,
Yeah. Okay, right.
Tuesday or Thursday. Can't
Yeah.
remember. One or
Yeah.
the other. Yeah. Yeah.
I was just on that point of listening and observing and skeleton and so on. of course, skeleton is moved by muscles, and so if you have your hands on the horse, maybe you feel muscles twitch before the skeleton moves or so, right? And that, so then you can refine that feel of changes in muscle tone or changes in whatever, energy from the horse. And so it's all connected, basically.
It is, yeah. And actually you can feel directions in the skin. It's quite weird. So, I mean that's just comes from a lot of hands-on work. At first, it took me ages to be, oh, look, my hand's all lit up. Ooh. I'll put it down. But I used to, like I put my hand on someone, on their pelvis, and I just couldn't feel anything. I could just feel like their clothes. But then eventually you start that it's the weirdest thing, the skeleton starts to emerge into your hands. So that's the specifics of what we're going to be looking at as well, is to start first you'll put your hands on your horse and you won't feel any bony landscape at all, but it will emerge with patience and practice. Once you feel the skeleton, everything gets a lot easier.
Yeah, that's the exciting part in a way, right? It
Yeah.
gets deeper and you discover more and it gets more
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
The more you feel, the more you see. It's just like
Mm.
writing.
Mm. Mm. Oh, the other thing is we've got Kristen Guest is going to join us for one of the lives as well. I persuaded her to come on. She's an absolute font of fantastic insight, really, isn't she? Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
very.
she really is, very experienced and very sensitive and intelligent rider. So that's fun. Yeah. Yeah.
And well, it's interesting, Catherine, because you were saying that when you first started with a Feldenkrais, you didn't really feel much, And I remember when I took my first riding lessons, I mean, I could have been sitting on a log, it would have been the same sensation. All horses felt the same. I didn't feel anything.
Mm.
And it took a long time. And eventually, you start to feel different things, and the horses feel different.
Yeah.
Different horses feel different,
Yeah.
right? And you start to feel more details, and everything becomes more differentiated.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I guess
Yeah.
that.
And I kind of was thinking today, it was like, oh, my horse has become like rockable. He's like rockable in all sorts of directions where he was just so stiff before. So that's really, I mean, it's taken a long time, but it's been so worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here we have 35, 38, 7. Sorry,
Hello.
number. I said what you described sounds very helpful, even though I have only had a small taste of FeldenHorse. Still very much fumbling in the dark. My horses clearly like it.
Yeah.
Forward to learning more.
Yeah.
That's the thing. They all like it.
Mm.
Even the ones that were abused and that had lots of bad experience with the traditional aids, they respond well to that non-invasive, friendly, invite, approach.
Yeah, and actually, if there's a FeldenHorse session where they don't enjoy the place that you're touching, it doesn't matter because every session that you do will be helping that place which is difficult become easier to access at some point. So it's not a failure if you can't do one of the sessions with your horse says no. You just go, okay, you're not really ready for me to have my hands there or for me to be there or pay attention. It's I think you said like every dressage essential is underpinned by weight shifting effectively, which is true. So we're always, the more places you can find for your horse to shift weight and for you to shift weight, all these movements will start to open up, even the difficult ones. Oh, hi, Maria. You're 35387. It's your spy identity.
Incognito.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, this should be exciting.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm excited. Yeah. It should
Well,
be
it's so interesting to hear everybody's experiences then, how their writing improves, how maybe view writing differently, how their aids improve, their feel, their coordination, how the horses improve, like the horse's body awareness and their mutual understanding, that would be, well, yeah, it's exciting. I'm looking forward.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And for those of you who can attend, if you have more questions, you can bring them to the next session. You can ask, always on the Facebook pages as well. So please don't hesitate to put your questions, your feedback, anything you want to discuss. Mm.
Sabine says, as I do not have a horse at the moment, I will try to translate this to my dog, Okilo Poodle. Curious
It'll be
how it
good.
works.
You'll love it.
So I will need to create an approach.
Yeah, or you can borrow a horse.
Mm.
But your dog will like it for sure. They're very easy to shift weight compared to horses.
Okay,
You're like,
really.
woof, be springing across. Very little connection. Mm. Yeah, hopefully, Sabina, as well, you'll enjoy the lessons for yourself as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, does anybody have questions for Catherine? Or about the course or anything else?
Go and have a look at if you haven't looked at it already, just go and have a look at the course page, and there's a lot of information on it about what's included. So it's yeah, it's there. So, and then once you've had a look at it, you can come back and tag me somewhere. Maybe Artistic Dressage is a good place, or yeah, or if you're in Feldenfit, you can ask me there too. Yes, Catherine, there are human exercises to go along with the horses. Yeah, because if you need to be centered, balanced over your base of support, be able to have all your 6 dressage essentials, your 6 movement essentials, in order to be able to do a good quality of hands-on work with your horse. And I think that's often what's missing for people when they first learn hands-on work. Is they don't know how to organize themselves. So they're just like hands with no support from themselves. Yeah. So then you're kind of bringing your own dysfunctional movement patterns, and you're then using your hands on your horse, and that's all they can feel. Mm. Do I find that some horses take more time to start to? Yes, definitely. And so with those horses, less is more. Reduce short sessions, find what they like. Don't worry if they don't like something. It's not a failure on your part at all. It's just that, they probably have been interfered with a bit too much. That's often the case, I find. People who have had, horses have had a lot of physical interaction. They often just like, if you're giving them a choice, they're just like, oh God, just leave me alone. That's what I find. Yeah.
Yeah, you may have to just hang out in the stall and
Yes.
hands on the horse and not ask for anything. Maybe
Yeah.
lean a little with your chest against the horse. I find that's a
Yeah.
nice connection.
Yeah.
Sort
Yeah.
of hand on the withers, hand on the
Yeah.
croup, or one on the
Most horses
stern and
don't
one
mind a
on the
hand on the withers, do they? So that can be and I
yeah.
found most horses don't seem to mind hands on the ischial tuberosities, the sitting bones.
Exactly.
They often don't like anything around their chest. Yeah, shoulders can be tricky because often their shoulders are so tight that it's just sensitive. But often, yeah, sitting bones and withers, and yeah, that can be a good place to start. Yeah.
And if you keep the horse loose in the stall,
Yeah.
that you can walk away if he doesn't like it.
Indeed.
That's
Yes.
good feedback,
Yes. Oh, and with my horse, I did I did a lot when he was grazing, so that at least I could feel how he was moving, and I could start to kind of play around without him getting bothered by me, you know. So that was for my own learning. But maybe I don't think it did him much harm. It may have even helped a bit. Mm. So yeah, and obviously Charlotte and I are there to support you on creative solutions if your horse doesn't like it.
Yes.
Anything. Yeah. There's always ways that you can modify or go sideways or under the radar. Mm.
Catherine always talks about how, when you do your own Feldenkrais exercises, that if something hurts, you just visualize it. You don't do anything, you just visualize it. You could do the same with a horse.
Mm.
Just put your hands on the horse and just
Exactly.
think of rocking and see what
Yes.
happens.
Yes. And in fact, some of the lessons for you are kind of like that. They're just like rocking yourself that you can take straight away Just put your hands on without asking anything and just rock yourself, and you'll be amazed. Because when you don't ask for anything, but you move yourself, your horse is less bothered by it. I think they're
Mhm.
often bothered because people kind of like push into them, like
Mhm.
want something.
Right.
You want something, and then it's like, ugh, get away from me.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and the
And
horse,
actually, people are
you,
like that too.
yeah.
I don't like it when people kind of get too much into wanting something from me, hands on. Ugh, it's horrible.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, Thomas, I interrupted.
Yeah, I was just thinking like, if you put your hands on the horse and you start rocking a little bit, the horse might join you, So
Indeed.
you're not
Often
asking
that's
him
true.
to do it, he's just harmonizing with you, and then suddenly,
Yeah.
the horse moves with you. I mean, I've had that happen.
Exactly. Yeah. And often they have a kind of, like a sort of postural sway anyway. So you can just kind of put your hands on and they'll sway you and you won't know whether you're swaying them or they're swaying you. So that's very, very non-intrusive, unintrusive. Mm. Sounds like that's what you did, Sabina. So with Aurelia. Mm.
He's walking in all directions.
Yeah.
Almost like stirring.
Mm.
Yeah. Already it was for a month of solid, not amused rock.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's familiar to me.
Yeah. Depending on their previous experiences in life.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And some horses, their experiences in life was so bad that they just reject everything. I mean, if we've
Yeah.
had horses in training that who would just say no to everything. They didn't
Mm.
even hear you out. They didn't even try to think
Mm.
about what you were asking. It's like, no,
Mm.
screw you. I'm not
Mm.
doing it. So, and then you have to find a way to get them to, I don't
Mm.
know, to you open up and try something.
Mm.
And for those horses, the Felden horse is great. Just like in the
Mm.
saddle, stirrup stepping is great because
Yes.
there's usually no bad experience, and it's also non-intrusive. It's
Yeah.
inside out rather than from the outside in. It's not a pressure you apply.
Yeah.
It's just a little walking motion. So
Mm.
very similar in that sense.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a little bit like stealthy stirrup stepping.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
exactly. Mm.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
You've got football tonight.
Must be, huh? World Cup is still
World
going on.
Cup, yeah.
Who's playing?
England versus Norway.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, Portugal is out, so too bad.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
No way, they've been doing
Mm.
really well.
Sorry, yeah. Norway, I know. They've got their thing that they do, where they're Viking rowers, yeah.
No,
And they've got a drum beat.
didn't.
How are we going to beat that? I don't know.
It's, yeah,
Yeah. Mm.
Maria says most of the time Maria is not keen on being touched at all. Sometimes she likes FeldenHorse, sometimes
Mm.
not. She's always loose in the stable, so when she's not in the mood, I just let her walk away, looking
Mm.
for to learning new strategies.
Yeah. And you may find that Charlotte shows an air touch. So you may find that she's happier with an air touch, or even that you're standing back from her and tracing out the movements in yourself, which are asking her to move in these specific ways. And you never know, she might well respond, but feel less threatened by it or
Right.
yeah. And regardless, I think that with your skills as a rider, you'll be able to use that in your own riding in the saddle as well. You'll be able to use the ideas. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think so. Mm.
Lots of possibilities there.
Yeah, lots of possibilities. Yeah. And like any of these things, because it's the course is live, we will adapt to what people want and need. So I have an idea about, the structure of the course, and Charlotte and I have discussed it, but there may be things that we need to add and fill in. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Yeah. Go Norway. Ugh.
This time, wouldn't that be something?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it would. Good. So
Yeah. Well, any more questions, or do you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, I think let's wrap it up. We know we're going to do a comeback, so maybe over a few days, people who are thinking about it but want to know a little bit more or want to understand a little bit more will come and can ask that in the next one. And yeah, we'll see you all the next time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thomas.
Thanks, Catherine.
All right.
We'll see you all soon.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.